The Little Buttercup. Once upon a time there was a prince from an exotic, mysterious land who had travelled far and wide to fulfill the final wishes of his father, the king. The king meant very much to his son, as he was the only constant that the prince had ever known, the one thing he never had to give up or lose. The king had taught him that a man's word was his bond. He taught him of values, ethics, and beliefs. To not love the material world, for such things come and go, but of the deeper things in life, of hopes, beliefs, memories, experiences, courage, of music, and of unconditional love. You see, the king had suffered a mortal wound in his homeland, and had but a limited time to live before he went to the great beyond. The prince knew this, as they had no secrets between them, and the king always regretted not being able to travel to other worlds with his son. Thus the prince sacrificed his kingdom, his home, his family, and even his friends, to spend what little time remains with his father, and to ensure that his final wish would come true. The two thus travelled afar, and soon found themselves in the land of wolves, an ancient place with many myths and legends, and tales of warriors, heroes, and magic. However, this world, as many others, was changing rapidly, and it was there that they found themselves stuck, through happenstance, unable to leave or go. They decided to make the best of the situation, and found an old damaged castle to live in, far away from the cities and their temptations, nearer to the sea, for the prince so loved the sea as well. While the castle was in bad repair, they both saw hope in it, a final resting place and somewhere they can belong, somewhere new to call home. There they settled and started about fixing up the castle, and started sharing the knowledge and teaching the locals the skills they had learnt back home. One day, the prince happened on a young maiden with bright blue eyes, light blonde hair, and who was petite in stature, all things that he found very attractive. He couldn't quite put his finger on it, but he felt there was something special about her. You see, 4 years prior he had been praying to meet the love of his life, his princess. Then, in a dream, he had seen the very maiden that was before him. He didn't remember the dream at the time, but felt connected to her somehow. Now, the maiden was born with a flower for a heart, and without any nurturing it had started to wither and wilt, and as the flower grew less, so did her love. She was focused on the things that people of that time and place were accustomed to, studies, career, and material things. But the prince looked deeper and saw something magical within her that he greatly admired. He looked past all the worldly things and saw the little flower. He saw hope. The prince took up teaching the young maiden about many a thing, and in so doing the flower stopped wilting and drooping. Over time, the little flower started to grow into a beautiful little buttercup, dainty, sensitive, and fragile, yet so beautiful in its sweetness. Eventually the prince's father passed away, and the prince felt himself alone in a foreign land with few to care for or understand him. This made his heart grow cold, as his own little world was shattered, but the maiden was there for him as best she knew how, and they talked many a night. However, the time came for the two to part from each other's company, and on the final day, as they said their goodbyes, he saw a little magical tear roll down the maiden's cheek and drop onto the little flower. It melted his heart, and it stirred a feeling of love deep inside, something he had not felt for a very long time. For though his own heart had grown cold and lost its color, it now saw the little flower and started to beat again, a purple pulse emanating from it with each beat. The two wouldn't stay apart for long, though, as the prince and maiden soon found themselves back in each other's company. The maiden had finished her studies and was now working for the kingdom of the land. This meant that they were far apart, as the prince was some distance from the hustle and bustle of city life, in a small town away from all the drama and temptations that life can bring. The feelings they had for each other were stronger than any measure of distance, though, and the maiden found a way to visit a prince, even if it were just for a few hours in a month. The prince's love of the ocean had made him smell like the waters of the sea, a scent which always helped calm the maiden. And the prince's home became a safe place for her, a refuge, an escape from the troubles and stresses of the world. It was a magical place where she could be fully free with her prince. The moment she would arrive, she would give a long, deep breath, as if she had been holding it in all the time, and could finally inhale and exhale again. The little bit of time they had together stood still, and was so valuable to the prince that he didn't dare sleep, work, or do anything else, except be with his princess every second he could. Every moment they spent together made the little buttercup grow stronger and more beautiful, blossoming with vivid colors. In time, the prince had taken the lovely maiden and showed her that there was more to life than studies and work, than the world and its material things. One day, he asked her to take off her shoes and sit with him on the grass, something that was not common in this land. She felt the soft grass under her feet, and then they laid in each other's arms, looking up at the blue sky. He would often sing and play for her on his piano and guitar, which helped the little flower grow stronger and stronger, and sometimes she danced in the ballroom to imagining music. She hadn't even realized it, but she started singing throughout the day. And once she confided in the prince that she had never thought this kind of love possible, that she had become a better person. Once he wanted to do something special, and upon her arrival took her somewhere as a surprise. They travelled through a grove of trees that covered the road on both sides like a canopy. All the while her fingers danced over his chest and played with the silvery locks of hair. Then onwards towards the sea, where they played in sand and picked up shells. Back at the castle, the prince had planted potatoes, and together they dug them out of the soil, and she felt the earth on her fingers. She nurtured little seeds into sprouts, and she learnt of passion and desire, and how one kiss or touch could make her feel intense sensations that she never knew possible. She even cooked meals for her prince, which he appreciated more than anything, and she would kiss his lips and feel his hands. She learnt what it felt like to be protected in his arms, to be without a care in the world, and to be free. Some nights they played chess, and the princess would always win. Other nights they cuddled up by a fire, with the prince holding her legs while she slept so they wouldn't fall down and wake her, all the while looking at her with love and appreciation. He had shown her how to be more feminine, how to embrace her beauty and accept her own body as it is, something she was insecure of and wanted to change. He loved all of her, with all her imperfections, just as she loved him with all his imperfections as well. She had become a beautiful princess, the fairest in all the land. But above all, she learned of unconditional love and sacrifice, for the prince had been presented with a chance to go back home. But it was no place for his princess, as it was a place of extreme beauty, but also of immense cruelty. She had begged the prince to stay and not go, or that she would give up everything to go with him. But he couldn't do that, knowing that she would die there. So he stayed in the land of wolves, where his princess would be safe. Thus the two spent their time together, and the prince longed for his princess to be by his side. He tried to find ways for them to be together permanently, but the world had other plans. You see, while the prince could care for her in the safe castle and protect her, the world had secretly planted a weed in her heart, one that slowly started growing along the buttercup and wrapped itself around it. The prince had noticed it, and grew concerned as it would eventually kill the little flower. He told her what he had found, and that if the weed continued to grow, their love would end. The weed was from the world, and the world is corrupted, and thus it corrupts all that partake in it. But it had taken deep root, and removing it would kill the little flower as well. He further warned her that a time will come where she would have to make a decision that will affect the buttercup and the weed, and if the weed should grow, his heart would stop, as the little flower is what makes his heart beat. But the princess assured her prince that the little flower was more important. She had felt things she had never thought possible. She had found hope and love. So the two went on happily in love for almost 2 years. They had some ups and downs, but their love for each other had always prevailed. That was until the dreaded time came. The kingdom was under immense pressure, and so decided to send the princess to a dark and dangerous place. A place of greed and money, a worldly place which had enslaved the people from the prince's land. The prince felt very concerned for her safety, as he could not accompany her and protect her, and that it would make the weed grow faster. But the princess felt obligated to go. Many scenarios played through the prince's head as to how he would set about rescuing her should he be kidnapped, how he would have to sneak through cover of night into that land to find her should something happen to her. He also reminded her of the flower and the weed. If she nurtures the weed from the world, his heart would stop, and so their love. The prince wasn't against the princess traveling round the world. He wanted her to experience other places and their people too. But this one place was a dangerous one that was full of temptations. The princess, still feeling obligated, went on her journey, and thus the prince's heart stopped beating. The prince used the last bit of love he had to ensure that she was safe. But her going there had cracked his heart, and with it his love seeped out, and instead jealousy and anger entered. So upon her safe return, without a working heart, the prince ended things. Deep down inside, he didn't want to, for he still loved his princess so very much, and wanted her to experience life in all its ways. But he had promised her that his heart would break, and it did. And so, in time, the little flower also stopped growing. However, the prince's heart still had a drop of love for his flower left in it, and that was enough to repair the crack and fix his heart. But it was too late. The little buttercup was nowhere to be found. The weed had overshadowed it, and with it the prince's love was lost. And try as he might to find her, his little flower had gone. So the prince did the only thing he could still think of. He wrote the story, in hopes that one day, upon reading it, a magical little tear will fall onto the flower and make it blossom again.